70-742 Lab 1 for Lesson 1. I'm performing this on Hyper-V as our ACE-IT lab does not support a large enough environment for us to do this. So Lesson 1, Lab 1 is installing and configuring domain controllers. So exercise 1.1 is installing a new forest. In this exercise, we're going to use the tor-dc1 to create a new forest. Understand that a forest is a collection of domain trees that share a common Active Directory domain service. To create a new forest or a new domain, or to add a new domain controller to an existing domain, you must install the Active Directory domain services role on a Windows Server 2016 computer, and then run the Active Directory domain services configuration wizard. So we're going to go ahead and log on to DC1, and remember now currently this is just a member server, and if I attempt to log on simply with the administrator account, look what it does. It says sign in to Tor DC1. Remember, if you just type in administrator, it defaults to the local administrator account. Now, also keep in mind we only use the administrator account because we're in a test lab. If this is a production network, the first thing you're going to do is create a new administrator account with an abstract name, and you're going to disable or delete the administrator account. Best practice. It's a cyber security best practice. So to make sure that we are going to log in to a datum, we have to do a datum \administrator, and then we'll type in our password. And once the server manager comes up, this is already, we're already part of the domain, so we want to take this out of the domain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click the start button, and we're going to go to system. We can get to that dialog to do what we want to do by clicking on system info. For whatever reason, this rename the PC didn't work. So I'm going to go scroll to the bottom of the list here. I'm going to go related to, I'm going to click on system info. And here is our dialog. Now I can click change settings. And now I'm going to click change. And we're going to leave the datum.com domain. And we're going to type in workgroup for our workgroup name. We're going to click OK. And just remember, you need to know what the password is for the local administrator account. So if at some point you had deleted or disabled the local administrator account, you need to take the steps to make sure that's available prior to doing this. Click OK. And it wants to know, hey, who has permissions to leave the domain? We're going to click OK. Welcome to the workgroup. We click OK. Yep, we know we need to. We're going to click close. It's going to prompt us, and we're going to restart. Should only take a moment. And we log in with the local administrator account. And now once this comes up, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go up to manage. We're going to go add roles and features. We're going to do next, 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 and we're going to install Active Directory domain services. We're going to add our features. We're going to go next, next, next. We're going to click install. Password's expired. What? How is that even possible? So while this is installing, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go in here because we don't want to have our local administrator account have an expired password, right? So let's get in here and users, I'm going to set password, and I'm going to use the same password. Click OK. Password's been set, but I'm also going to right click on it. I'm going to go to properties and say password never expires. It's just been that it's been so long since I set this up, the password expired on it. Didn't even realize it. Okay, so let's promote this to a domain controller. So what we're going to do in this exercise is we're going to add a new forest. And this forest is going to be in the contoso.com domain, a different Microsoft domain that you can work with. Contoso.com. Click Next. Now it's going to ask us, let's set a password for the directory services restore mode. We're going to do our same default password. Well, there is no other DNS, so it can't be delegated. That's what we understand. So if we were doing the lab, this would be where you're going to be answering your first question. And that first question is, what is the message displayed in the warning? Well, type in the answer. A delegation for this DNS server cannot be created because the authoritative parent zone cannot be found. It's just as simple as that. Answer to question 1. We click Next. On the additional options, it's going to verify the NetBIOS name, which should be Contoso. Should take just a moment. And once that appears, we're going to be clicking Next. And on our Paths page, remember, if this was a production domain controller, I might want to store my database folder and log files and sysfile folder on a different drive. We just have our single drive for our test environment. We're going to click Next. We're going to review our options. We click Next. And it's going to verify that everything's ready to go. And it's going to give us the install option. Let's jump back 1 second. Back over here. Under the additional options here, what additional options are going to be installed? Right here. Additional options, global catalog, DNS server, create DNS delegation. Well, the options that will be installed are flagged in yes, a global catalog and a DNS server. So you'll remember from our lecture on lesson 1 that the first domain controller always has to have global catalog installed. And since there is no other DNS, we're installing DNS. So we're going to verify those prerequisites. That was question 2, by the way. Make sure you've typed those answers in. And all prerequisite checks passed successfully. Click Install. So this is going to take a few moments, and we're going to pause the video while it installs. Okay, our installation was successful, and we've got the message that our new domain controller is going to restart because Active Directory Domain Service was installed. It's no longer just a member computer. It's no longer just a standalone server. It's now a domain controller. So when this restarts, are we part of a datum domain? No. Remember, we took it out of the datum domain, made it a workgroup server. We've just installed Active Directory Domain Services. And when this restarts, it's going to be the domain controller for the contoso.com domain. And it's coming back up, so it's applying computer settings. It's going to install or apply the group policy settings as a default for the very first time. So when you've promoted a system to a domain controller, it usually takes a few more moments for it to restart. So here again, I'm going to go ahead and pause this so you're just not sitting here watching my swirly while you'll have to be doing the same. Okay, so our tor.dc1 has rebooted, and you'll see here it says sign into Contoso. Well, this is our domain controller, so we can get away with just putting in the administrator name to sign in with. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get logged in there. So our server manager is coming back up. Going to wait for that to fully load. Okay, so we're up. Let's go ahead and let's click on Tools and then Active Directory Users and Computers. This would be step 32. So I'm going to make this a little bit larger, make it a little bit easier to see all the different areas. We're going to expand the contoso.com node. And we can now see our Active Directory. So this would be your screenshot for step 34. If I select domain controllers, we can see our one computer that's part of our contoso.com domain. So that completes exercise 1.1. Exercise 1.2, demoting a domain controller. Understand, to remove a domain controller from an Active Directory Domain Services installation, you must begin by running the Remove Roles and Features wizard, as shown in the steps that we're going to follow right now. So on tour.dc1, we're going to go up to Manage. We're going to click, instead of Add, we're going to do Remove Roles and Features. We're going to click Next and Next, and here we're going to say we want to remove Active Directory Domain Services. And we also want to remove the features that are there to manage it. Now it says, hey, do you want to demote this domain controller? So yes, we need to say we want to demote this domain controller. And on the credentials page, we're going to select force the removal of this domain controller. So this is going to remove that entire domain, right? It's the only domain controller we have. So when we're done, the domain will be gone. We're going to click Next. We're going to click Proceed with Removal. It's going to remember talking about all the different operations masters. Well, here all this is going to be gone. We're going to click Next. We're going to put in our password, because we have to set a new password, because remember, when this became a domain controller, the local accounts disappeared. This is going to recreate the local account. Now our option is not install, because we're not adding something, we're removing. Our option for a domain controller when we remove it is demote. Go ahead and click demote. Now, just the same way as when we create or add the domain controller role, we have to restart the computer. When we demote it and remove the domain, once again, we have to reboot. So this is going to reboot in just a moment. So now, did it ask us if we wanted to remove DNS? When this restarts, let's take a look. And we should be restarting here in just a second. So that came up a lot quicker than when we installed the role, didn't it? I mean, that just makes sense. My license is expired. It's been a while since I used this. So remember, these are evals. So I want to, before we do anything else, I'm going to go into PowerShell and I'm going to switch to a command prompt, and we're going to run slmgr.vbs/rearm so that we can reset the license on this. There we go, and I'm going to shut down and restart. We should come up and we should no longer see that warning. Yes, the expired warning's gone. Okay, let's get rid of that. Okay, so we're back up. Now we're logged in. We're not part of a domain anymore, are we? No. Okay, so I'm going to, let's see, where do we go here? It says right click the network status and choose Open Network and Sharing Center. Well, that's down here, right? So we're going to go here. We're going to select Ethernet, and we're going to take a look here. Let's go to our options. We're going to right click. We're going to go to Properties. We're going to double click IPv4. What DNS server? Well, we're still pointing to ourselves because we were the DNS server for the contoso.com domain. Will that work anymore? No. We need to change this. Let's change the local loopback to 172.16.0.10. We're going to go ahead and we're going to click OK. We're going to click OK. Okay. Now we should be able to get an IP address, and we should be able to connect to our datum. Let's see what we've got here. Still didn't get anything, right? So what are we going to do? Let's see what it takes to get a valid IP address. Well, that's probably not going to work because we've got an APIP address right now. By all rights, we probably need to go and we need to put our static IP assignment back in on this. Because remember, we want this to be this is a server. We want it to have a static assignment. So I'm going to cancel that, and let's go ahead and let's get out of here. And I'm going to go back into here, and we're going to go back into properties, and I'm going to go to use the following. Now, what is the IP address for LUN-DC? Anybody have their documentation open? Because I don't. I haven't used that in what? It seems like forever now. So, guess what? We got to grab that. Okay, well, maybe we don't need to do this. I went into my Hyper-V settings and I realized that I had my Toronto DC or Tor DC and my Lund DC on two different virtual switches. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click cancel and cancel, and let's see. Oh yeah, look there, it's already set to a datum.com, so it already got a valid IP. Let's take a look and make sure. Yep, there it is. So by all rights, we could now change that assignment of the DNS server to automatic as well, because it would get that from the DHCP. So let's take a look and see where we're at. Okay, so we're on step number, let's see, we're going to go on, going down our list. We're down at step 20, and we want to, or step 19, we want to go into our system, and we're going to join this back into our domain. So let's go back up here. We're going to go system, we're going to go to system info, and we want to change settings. We're going to click change, and we want to bring this back in as a member of our datum.com domain. It says, hey, who's authorized to join? Should only take a second or two or three, and we're there. So we click OK. We click OK. We're going to take a screenshot showing that you've been joined to a datum. Once you paste your screenshot in, Go ahead and close and restart. So we created a new domain, the contoso.com domain. We demoted and basically destroyed the domain. We logged back in. We reset our DNS server so that it could get a valid IP or a valid DNS information. We discovered that we were on two different Hyper-V switches, so corrected that, and immediately we got a valid IP address. And now we're going to log back in. So at this point, you're done with exercise 1.2. So exercise 1.3 is adding a domain controller to an existing domain. So every Active Directory domain should have a minimum of 2 domain controllers. This is the heart of your network. This is how all your users authenticate and get their authorization for what they can do. What happens if you're running a network and you've got a single domain controller and it crashes? You're toast. It stops working. Everything stops working. You can't get access to network printers. You can't get access to network resources. You can't authenticate. Everything goes down. So that's why you always have to have a minimum of 2 domain controllers in every domain. So to install a second domain controller, the server should be pointing to a DNS server for the domain that you installed. In addition, it's best that that server already be joined to the domain. So let's go ahead. Now remember, tor.dc1 is just a member server. So we need to do the adatum/administrator and our default password. Remember, best practices. Don't use the administrator account in production networks anytime, anywhere, in any way. And of course, never use default passwords. Our server manager comes up and we're ready to begin exercise 1.3. And we're going to, so if you look, you've got a yellow triangle, right? So we still have Active Directory domain services installed. It just isn't configured to anything. So we want to promote it back up to being a domain controller. Remember, we never removed the actual feature. We only demoted it. So we're going to click promote, and we're right back to our wizard. Well, in Active Directory Domain Services configuration wizard, on our deployment configuration, it should say add a domain controller to an existing domain. That would be your default, because we're already part of the datum. So it says, hey, do you want to add this as an additional domain controller? So we say, yeah, we're going to click next. It's going to take a moment, because what it's doing is it's contacting the domain and saying, hey, let's take a look at what's already there. It's going to take just a moment. We're going to let this complete. Okay, so it's contacted our lund-dc1, and it's grabbing some of that information, because remember, domain controllers in the same domain are equal. They replicate that Active Directory partition equally, so that whatever changes on one gets reflected on the other, or the others. So question number 4 is, which site name is assigned to the domain controller? Well, we've only got one site, and it is default first site name. Here's your answer to question 4. So we need to once again set a directory services restore mode password. That is, if things go wrong, that command line interface that we can get back into. We're going to use our default password. We're going to click next. And on the delegation, On the DNS options, we're going to click Next. Now on the additional options, we're going to answer question number 5. So it asks, which option should be selected when the server is not connected to the network and other domain controllers? Well, if we can't connect, it's asking for the replication. This is what they're talking about. See, right now, we're going to replicate from any domain controller. You would select, if you are not connected to the network, you would need to have media. You would install from media. That is your answer to question number 5. We're going to click Next. And we're going to go ahead and on the paths, we're going to click Next one more time. On the review options, I take that back. Let's see, wait a minute. On the paths, yeah, on the review options, take a screenshot. Here's your screenshot. So it shows that first site name, that it's going to be an additional domain controller for datum.com. This would be your step number 8 in this exercise for your screenshot. Once you've got that, go ahead and click Next. It does the prerequisites, and once it checks those prerequisites against our domain, we'll be able to click Install. We're just going to wait here, make sure everything's running properly. Because remember, this is not our first domain controller anymore. Now we're creating redundancy, we're creating resiliency. Everything passed successfully. Let's go ahead and click Install. It's going to take a few moments, because now instead of creating the new structure, it's going to replicate it. It's going to get a copy of it. And we should be able to see that reflected in those progress messages as it creates that information, as it copies the information. See, it's checking to see, hey, does the management console, the group policy management console, need to be installed? Now, see that now, instead of creating new, it's replicating. And just that quick, we're done. Okay, we didn't set a static IP assignment. Remember that? So it's important that we do that once this reboots. So it's going to take a few moments, and it's going to reboot, and when it comes back up, I'm going to restart the video. Okay, so while that restarts as a domain controller, let's take a quick look at our setup instructions here. So our London DC1 has an IP address of 172.16.0.10, and it's on a Class C subnet. Well, our Tor DC1 is defined to be on a different subnet. This is on the .0, this is on the .1. So I'm going to leave that as an automatic IP assignment, because if I were to assign the 172.16.1.10 that our instructions say, I would be on a different subnet. We don't have a router installed, so there's no routing between sites. Our communication would break. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to leave that just the way it is. We're a domain controller, right? We should be able to just log in with the administrator account, at least as far as in our test lab. Now I know we're up to about 31 minutes here in our video. I don't normally run more than about 20, low 20s, but I want to go ahead. I want to do this all in one shot. So we're back up. Let's find that. And what we're going to do is we've logged in, and we're going to go into Tools. We're going to go Users and Computers, ADUC. We're going to make that view a little bit larger. And we're going to expand to datum.com. And look at that. There's all of our structure from the Lund DC1. It's an exact copy of Lund DC1. If I create a user account here, On Tor DC1, it will replicate to Lund DC1. So select domain controllers, and we should see two. And there they are. They both got global catalogs. They have their GCs, they're flagged. They're both in the same site. So go ahead and take a screenshot of this and paste that into step 14. Once you've done that, we can go ahead and we can close this. We can close ADUC. But we're going to go back to Tools, and we're going to open up Active Directory Sites and Services. So Active Directory Sites and Services is where we control our subnets and various other information. We're going to expand sites. We're going to click on and expand the default first site name, and we're going to expand servers. And there are our servers. Remember, in one of our exercises, we had worked with server 1. So I'm going to select Tor DC1. I'm going to expand it. I'm going to select the NTDS settings and right click it. I'm going to go to Properties. So remember, we added this as an additional domain controller, and one of the flags was to install the global catalog. So question 6, is the global catalog option checked or unchecked? It better be checked. It very well should be checked. So there's your answer. We can go ahead and we can click OK, and we can close Active Directory Sites and Services. So exercise 1.3 is done. We're on the home stretch. Exercise 1.4, moving operation masters. So we talked in lesson 1, we talked at length about the different types of operation masters, our FSMO roles. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to go back in, and we're going to open up the ADUC, Active Directory Users and Computers again. And I'm going to right click on a datum. And we're going to say change domain controller. And right now, here's our current. We're going to select the Tor. Let's see, we're logged on to Tor DC1. Yep. And we're going to click OK. We're going to right click, and we're going to say Operations Masters. And we can see that the Lund DC1 is currently the Operations Master. This is the RID Operations Master. So if I click Change, it's going to make Tor DC1 the RID Operations Master. That's what we're going to do. We're going to click Change. And are you sure you want to transfer the role? Yes, I do. And it was successfully transferred. Click the PDC tab. So here again, we're going to transfer the PDC emulator to our Tor DC1 domain controller. Okay, transferred. Let's answer question 7. Which operations master acts as the master time server and is considered authoritative for account passwords? Do you remember what I told you in lesson 1? It's the PDC emulator. Question 7. Select the Infrastructure tab. And let's transfer the infrastructure role to our Tor DC1. Say yes. Successfully transferred. So 3 of our 5 roles were transferred using this interface in Active Directory Users and Computers. Let's go ahead and click Close, and we're going to close ADUC. Let's go to Tools, Active Directory, Domains and Trusts. We're going to right-click on the title, Active Directory, Domains and Trusts, and we're going to say change active directory domain controller. We're going to click on the tour, say OK. We're going to right click on it again and say Operations Master. There's only one, and we're going to say change. And we are going to say yes. And it was successful. And click close. Actually, let's go ahead, let's go back into that and take a screenshot here and paste that into step 14. You got your screenshot, click close. We can close Active Directory domains and domain and trusts. Now, we're going to need to do something a little different here. To be able to do our next step, we have to go to Run, and we're going to type in CMD, and we're going to run a command. We're going to run reg server 32, and then we're going to tell it to register a DLL. So reg svr 32, and it's schmmgmt.dll. So we want to register a service. Schema management. Succeeded. Okay, so from this command prompt, we can just type MMC. That's going to run the Microsoft Management Console. It's right there. And we can go File. We can go Add Remove. Oops, did that wrong. Okay, so we can click Add Remove Snap-in. And now we should be able to select Active Directory Schema. We're going to click Add. We're going to click OK. We're going to right-click on the schema and say Connect. Let's see, select it once. And then we're going to click Connect to Schema Operations Master. And if we look here, our LUN DC1 is our Schema Operations Master. We're going to right-click on it. We're going to say Operations Master. Let's see, change. Oh, sorry, we need to change Active Directory domain controller first. We want to select the Tor DC1. Not Farm Manager. OK. We click OK on the warning, and now we can transfer the role from LUN DC1 to Tor DC1. We're going to click OK. Click Change. Click Yes. Yes. So now we have transferred all 5 roles from LUN DC1 to Tor DC1. Take a screenshot. Paste that into step number 27. And we can go ahead and we can close the MMC and ask us, do we want to save any settings? Say no. So we're ready for our lab challenge, because we're going to take the roles back. So we need to jump over to our LUN DC1. And I'm going to run our command prompt. I'm going to run it as administrator just to be sure. And I'm going to run the ntds util. And you see that it changes the prompt. We're going to type in the word roles and press enter. It takes us to the FSMO maintenance prompt. And now we're going to type in connections and press enter. It says, hey, we want to do what? We want to connect to server Lun DC1. And now we are connected to our DC1. Now, so we connected it to it. We're going to type in quit, and that takes us back up to the FSMO maintenance prompt. And if we do a question mark, we can see some of the options that are available to us. I'm going to make this command prompt a little bit larger. So we can seize naming master. We can seize our different roles, right? This is how you might do it if a domain controller crashed that held all those roles. We can transfer them. We can seize them. We're going to seize the roles. We're going to start off by typing seize schema master. Are you sure you want to? Yes. Each time we're going to click yes. Successful. See, now we told it to seize, but because it was online, it transferred it. Seizure not required. We're going to type in the same thing, except this time we're going to go seize naming master. Again, we're going to click yes. Transferred successfully. Seizure not required. Seize RID master. Click yes. We're good to go. We've done 3. Let's do the last 2. Seize infrastructure master. Yes. Success. And finally, seize PDC. And we say yes. We have seized, we used the seize instruction, but because the domain controller was still online and said, hey, you don't need to do the seize, that's extreme, we're just going to go ahead and transfer those roles back. Go ahead and take a screenshot and paste that into step 9, and we're done. We can type in quit, and exit. And lab 1 is done.